Katrina was already exercising 4 sessions a week, showing up consistently, putting in the work, and she wasn't losing a single kilo. She came to me in her late 40s, convinced of 2 things: that she was eating the wrong foods all the time, and that she was addicted to sugar, specifically M&Ms and chocolate brownies, and there was absolutely no way she was ever going to be able to stop. In 16 weeks, she lost 10 kilos. Her sugar cravings, they disappeared completely, not reduced, completely gone. She rebuilt her energy, her confidence, and the way she looked at herself in the mirror. And she did it without cutting out food groups, without a meal plan she had to follow to the letter, and without a single conversation about willpower. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we did it. I'm Loz Antonenko, health and performance coach, and Katrina's story, the I'm doing everything right and nothing is working story, is the most common story I hear. It's not a motivation problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's a knowledge problem, specifically a missing piece problem. And once you find the missing piece, the result, it can happen faster than most people expect. 16 weeks, that's 4 months. Less time than most people spend trying the same broken approach over and over, expecting a different outcome. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why exercising without addressing nutrition is the single most common reason women in their 40s stall completely, why sugar cravings are almost never a willpower problem and what they actually are, and the 3-step process we use with Katrina that you can apply regardless of where you're starting from. Here's how this is structured. First, I'm going to walk you through where Katrina was and why she'd been doing what wasn't working and why that wasn't her fault. Then I'll break down the 3 pillars we use: the gut reset, the fuck-free Flexi food framework, and real life execution. And then I'll give you her full timeline and results and show you exactly where to start if this is your story too. Let's go. When Katrina came to me, she was in her late 40s. She was exercising regularly, 4 sessions a week, consistent, committed. She was doing exactly what she'd been told to do. But nothing was shifting. The scales weren't moving. Her energy was low. She felt stressed and overwhelmed. And her words to me were, I have no clue how to manage my life properly around food. Right? She wasn't someone who didn't care. She cared enormously. She had no framework that actually worked. And then there was a sugar issue. Katrina had what she described as a strong addiction to M&Ms and chocolate brownies. She'd tried cutting them out before. She'd white knuckled through a few days. The craving would come back harder than ever, and she'd end up eating more than she would have if she never tried to stop. She came to me genuinely believing that sugar was gonna be her lifelong problem, that she simply was just someone who couldn't trust herself around it. I want to pause here and say something directly because I think this matters. Katrina was wrong about that belief. Not because she was weak or naive, but because she was working from an incomplete mindset and a model of what sugar cravings actually are and where they even come from. Here is the most important thing I want you to take from this section, and it applies to almost every woman over 40 who is stuck in this pattern. Exercise is not a nutrition strategy, it's a fitness strategy, and fitness and fat loss are not the same thing. I see this constantly. A woman starts exercising more, which is great and important, and I'm not taking anything away from that commitment at all, but she's also not addressing what she's eating, when she's eating, or what's even driving her food choices. So she's burning some energy through exercise and then arriving home hungry, depleted, and craving exactly the food she's been trying to avoid. And because she's exercised, there's often a subconscious permission slip happening saying, hey, I earned this. It's a cycle that cancels itself out, and no amount of additional exercise is gonna break it. The fix is not more movement. The fix is addressing the food, but addressing it in a way that's actually sustainable. Not restriction, structure. And specifically, in Katrina's case, addressing the gut, because the gut is where cravings are generated and most people have absolutely no idea. Let me explain something about sugar cravings that completely changed how Katrina understood her situation. Your gut microbiome, the community of bacteria living in your digestive system, it doesn't just sit there passively. It actively signals to your brain. It influences your mood, your energy, your hunger hormones, and your cravings. And here's the problem. Certain strains of gut bacteria feed on sugar. When those strains become dominant, which happens when you eat a diet high in processed foods, refined carbohydrates, and irregular meal timing, they send signals to your brain that feel like cravings. The quote-unquote addiction Katrina felt, it wasn't a character flaw. It was a microbiome problem. Her gut was populated with bacteria that were demanding sugar, and her brain was receiving those demands as urgent, compulsive hunger. When you change the gut environment, when you starve those bacteria and repopulate with more diverse, health-promoting strains, the signals change. The cravings reduce, and in many cases, they disappear. That's not a theory. That's what happened with Katrina, and that's exactly why we deliberately created, using the first pillar of the Mojo Method, a solution that worked. So here are the 3 things we addressed in order. Pillar 1, the gut reset. We reset Katrina's gut environment to change the underlying biology driving her cravings. Pillar 2, the fuck-free Flexi food framework. We gave her a nutrition structure that was flexible enough to live inside, not a rigid meal plan she'd inevitably abandon. Pillar 3, real-life execution. We built the practical skills she needed to make better choices in the actual messy conditions of her life. Restaurants, work, takeaway traps, exhausted evenings. Each of these built on the last. And together, they created a result that Katrina describes as life-changing. The first thing we did with Katrina was not put her on a diet. The first thing we did was reset her gut. The reason we start here is simple. If the gut environment is driving the cravings, then trying to resist those cravings with willpower is kind of like trying to bail out a boat without plugging the holes. And you can work as hard as you want, but the water, it just keeps coming in. So plug the hole first, then the bailing becomes manageable. In Katrina's case, we use a 10-day reboot protocol using a product called Gut Right by ATP Science. And I want to be transparent here. I recommend this product because I've used it with many clients and I trust the formulation. There are other gut health approaches that can work, but this is what we use with Katrina, and I think it's worth naming specifically here because the result was very significant. The 10-day reboot is a concentrated gut microbiome modulation protocol. It involves taking the supplement alongside a period of eating that's designed to shift the bacterial landscape in the gut, specifically reducing the strains that feed on sugar and processed foods and creating an environment where more beneficial bacteria can thrive. Alongside the supplement, Katrina made some dietary shifts for those 10 days, reduced refined sugar and processed carbohydrates, increased vegetables and fiber, kept protein intake consistent, and added fermented foods where she could manage it. It wasn't a punishment protocol, it wasn't extreme, but it was deliberate and focused. Katrina expected the 10 days to be brutal. She'd tried cutting sugar before and knew what the cravings felt like when they hit. And she was basically bracing for a fight. Around day 7, she messaged me. She said, "Look, I don't know what's happening, but I don't want the M&Ms. I actually walked past them today and I didn't even think about it." That's not willpower. That is a biological shift. Her gut environment had begun to change. The bacteria driving the cravings had been starved out and the signals to her brain had quietened. By the end of the 10 days, she was sleeping better, her energy was more consistent, her mood was more stable, and she was no longer experiencing the compulsive pull towards sugar that had defined her relationship with food for years. She hadn't fought the craving. She'd changed the environment that was creating it. If you're someone who's repeatedly tried to cut sugar and failed, if you've beaten yourself up over it, called yourself undisciplined, told yourself you just don't have what it takes, I want you to hear this. You were probably not failing because of a character flaw. you were failing because the system driving the craving was still fully operational, and you were trying to override a physiological signal with a psychological strategy. That doesn't work long term. Changing the underlying environment does. The second pillar is the nutritional framework itself. And before I explain what we did, I want to explain what we deliberately did not do, because I think it's just as important. We did not give Katrina a rigid meal plan. Rigid meal plans have a shelf life. They work until the first Monday when you're traveling for work and the restaurant doesn't have what's on the plan, or the first Friday at night time when you're tired and the last thing you want to do is the meal prep that you didn't do on Sunday. The moment a rigid plan meets real life, it breaks. And when it breaks, most people don't just step off it, right? They abandon it completely, feel like they've failed, and spend the next few days eating whatever they want to compensate. So that cycle, the plan, the break, the shame, the overcompensation, is more damaging than no plan at all. What Katrina needed wasn't a perfect plan she couldn't maintain. She needed a flexible framework that she could operate inside regardless of what life threw at her. And that's what the fuck-free Flexi food framework is designed to be. The fuck-free Flexi food framework operates on 4 principles. Principle number 1, protein anchors every meal, not as a diet rule, as a biological tool. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. It keeps blood sugar stable, it preserves lean muscle tissue, and it reduces the physiological drivers of cravings. Every meal Katrina ate started with identifying the protein. Principle number 2 is volume before calorie density. We built meals around high volume, lower calorie density foods, vegetables, fiber, lean protein, so that Katrina felt physically satisfied without needing to track every single gram she ate. Principle 3, structure without rules. We established meal timing, breakfast within an hour of waking, lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, not as a rigid schedule, but as a structured anchor. Regular eating intervals prevent the blood sugar crashes that drive poor decisions. And principle number 4, flexibility is built in, not bolted on. The framework explicitly accounts for restaurants, social eating, work events, and tired evenings, because those things, they're not exceptions in a real life, right? They're part of it. A framework that can't handle them, it's not a framework, it's a fantasy. For Katrina, implementing the framework looked like this. Breakfast, a high protein option within an hour of waking. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, protein smoothie. She had options that suited her mornings. Lunch, she identified a protein source first, whatever that looked like on her given day, and built the rest of the meal around it. No pre-planned menu, just a decision-making process. Afternoon snack, something protein rich, but before the afternoon energy dip hit really hard. And this was a critical window where previously she'd have reached for something sweet. Dinner, same structure, protein first, vegetables next, then whatever carbohydrates you wanted alongside it. And meals out, restaurants, work lunches, social events. We went through those specifically. How to scan a menu quickly, what questions to ask, how to eat in a way that supports her goals without making a performance of it or making everyone else at the table feel really uncomfortable. Now, Katrina told me that the restaurant piece was actually the thing that gave her the most confidence, because previously, eating out had always felt like some sort of derailment, an event essentially where her progress would be undone. And after we worked through the framework for real life settings, she stopped seeing it that way entirely. One of the most significant habit shifts for Katrina was meal preparation. And I want to address this honestly, because I know the whole meal prep thing sounds like something that requires an entire Sunday afternoon and Instagram-worthy containers. It doesn't. What we established for Katrina was minimum viable prep. The only question we asked was, what's the thing I'll default to if I don't have something ready? For her, the answer was takeaway, and she knew that her takeaway choices were consistently the decisions that undermined everything else. So we identified the 2 or 3 scenarios where she was most likely to default to takeaway, and we built a simple meal prep habit around those exact moments. Not full meal prep, just enough meal prep to remove the decision in the moments where her defenses were lowest. A bag of cooked protein in the fridge, pre-washed vegetables, a few high-protein snacks in a bag. That was it. Small preparation, large impact, because the decision you make when you're tired and hungry and there's nothing ready is almost always not the decision you want to make. Here's something I want to say clearly, because it matters. Katrina didn't fail for 16 years because she didn't know that vegetables were better than brownies. Most people know what healthy looks like in the abstract. The gap isn't knowledge. The gap is execution, specifically execution in the real, messy, unpredictable conditions of actual life. The third pillar of the Mojo Method is what I call real life execution, and it's the piece that most nutrition programs either skip entirely or treat as some sort of afterthought. Execution means building the specific skills and habits that allow you to make consistently better decisions, not in ideal circumstances, but in real ones. The tired Tuesday, the unexpected work dinner, the kids screaming at 6 p.m, the holiday where you didn't pack your own food. With Katrina, we focused on 3 specific execution skills. Skill 1, decision-making in restaurants. We worked through a simple decision-making process that took less than 30 seconds. Scan for the protein options, identify the available choice, don't overthink it. No more arriving at a restaurant in good intentions and then leaving feel like she derailed everything. Skill 2, recovery from disruption. Now, this is the skill where most people never get to really develop it, and it's the one that actually determines long-term results. We explicitly practice the question: if I've had a meal that didn't serve my goals, what's the very next thing I do? Right? The answer's simple. The very next meal, you just return to the framework, full stop. No compensation, no punishment, no spiral, just back to the structure. And skill 3, the environmental setup. So we audited Katrina's home and work environments, what she'd had available, what she was surrounded by, what decisions she was making by default. We removed the things that were consistently undermining her and replaced them with better defaults. Not a dramatic overhaul, just a deliberate setup. I want to be honest about something that Katrina herself credits as essential to her result: the accountability of regular check-ins. Katrina told me at the end of the 16 weeks that the weekly check-ins were the thing that she hadn't realised that she needed until she had them. Not because I was policing her, but because knowing that she'd be reviewing the week created a level of intentionality in her decisions that actually wasn't there before. When you know you're going to talk to somebody about how your week went, you make slightly better decisions. Not perfect decisions, but better ones. And slightly better decisions compounded over 16 weeks, well, they produce a 10-kilo result. This is why I build accountability into every coaching engagement I offer, not as a surveillance tool, but as a structure that raises the stakes slightly on your own commitments to yourself. Let me walk you through what the 16 weeks actually look like, because I think the sequence matters. Weeks 1 and 2. We started with the 10-day gut reset. Alongside it, we introduced breakfast. Structured, protein-rich, consistent. Nothing else changed in her diet during this period though. Just those 2 things. Weeks 3 and 4. The gut reset complete. We introduced the full fuck-free Flexi food framework. Protein anchored at every meal. The afternoon snack protocol. Minimum viable meal prep. She noticed her energy improving, her afternoon cravings already significantly started reducing. Week 5 through to 8, we added the real-life execution skills, restaurant decision-making, recovery protocol, environmental setup. Her weight was beginning to shift noticeably at this stage, and she reported feeling, as she put it, lighter in every sense. Weeks 9 to 12, we continued to refine and then consolidate. The habits were becoming more automatic. The framework was feeling less like something she was following and more like just how she actually ate. No more defaulting to takeaways, not because she was restricting herself, but because she'd built at home ways of eating that were easier and more satisfying. Weeks 13 to 16. The final phase was about deepening confidence and preparing for independence. And we worked on scenarios she found the hardest: extended social situations, periods of travel, high stress work weeks. By this point, she had the skills to navigate all of them. At the end of week 16, 10 kilos gone. Sugar cravings, absent. Energy, higher than it had been in years. Confidence in food choices, strong enough that she now navigates restaurants, work events, and social situations without anxiety. If Katrina's story is your story, if you're exercising but not seeing results, if sugar is a thing that you can't seem to get past, and if you feel like you know what to do but just can't make it stick, here's exactly where to start. Week 1. Install breakfast, protein rich, within an hour of waking every single day. That's all. Don't change anything else yet. Week 2, add protein to every meal. Not a specific food, not a specific amount, just the practice of identifying and including a protein source at every single sitting. Week 3, consider a gut reset. If sugar cravings are a significant issue for you, addressing the gut is probably worth exploring, and speak to a health professional about options or look into the protocol that we use for Katrina. Week 4, build your minimal viable meal prep. Identify 1 or 2 scenarios where you most commonly default to poor choices and prepare specifically for those. Don't try to do all of this at once. The sequence matters. Build the foundation and then layer. Let me give you the complete picture. In 16 weeks, 10 kilos lost, sugar cravings completely eliminated, energy significantly and consistently improved, confidence in food decisions rebuilt from scratch, ability to eat out without anxiety fully develops, and relationship with her body and how she presents herself transformed. And she describes shopping for clothes again as a pleasure rather than something that she avoids. And Katrina's own words, this has been life-changing. That phrase, it gets used a lot in health and fitness, and I want to be specific about what it means in her case. It doesn't mean she's a different person. It means she now has a relationship with food that doesn't dominate her mental energy, doesn't create shame, and doesn't require constant effort to maintain. This is what sustainable change looks like. Not transformation that lasts 6 weeks. Transformation that lasts. Before the Mojo Method, Katrina's approach was exercise more, try to eat less, fight the sugar cravings, feel guilty when she failed, repeat. That approach worked for approximately 0 kilos over the years she'd been trying. The Mojo Method approach was identify the biological drivers, address the gut environment, build a flexible nutritional structure, develop real-life execution skills, and provide consistent accountability. 10 kilos in 16 weeks, cravings eliminated, confidence rebuilt. Same person, different inputs, completely different outcome. Let's bring this together. 3 pillars, 3 problems solved. Pillar 1, the gut reset. Address the biological environment that's driving the cravings, because you can't willpower your way out of a microbiome problem. Pillar 2, the fuck-free Flexi food framework. Build a nutritional structure that's flexible enough to live inside, with protein as the anchor at every meal and real-life eating built from the start. Pillar 3, real-life execution. Develop the specific skills, restaurant decisions, disruption recovery, environmental setup that allow you to maintain results in actual life, not just ideal conditions. If you take one thing from Katrina's story, take this. The craving is not the enemy. The craving is information. It's telling you that something in the system, the gut, the meal timing, the protein intake, the environment, is not set up to support you. Fix the system, and the craving often resolves itself. You don't need more discipline. You need better inputs. If you are exercising regularly and not seeing results, if sugar feels like a battle you keep losing, if you feel like you know what you should do but can't seem to make it stick, I want to help you find the answer, and the quiz is the fastest way to get there. The link below takes you to the Fix Your Mojo quiz, our free 2-minute diagnostic that identifies exactly what's getting in your way of your results and points you straight to the fix. We'll look at what's actually driving your specific pattern and whether the Mojo Method is the right fit. No sign up required, no pitch, just clarity on what your body actually needs and where to start. The quiz, well, the link is in the description below. It takes 2 minutes and the results, they are immediate. If this video has helped you, if Katrina's story is your story, please share it. Someone in your life needs to hear that the craving, it's not a character flaw, it's a system problem. And system problems have solutions. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.